Okay, this is going to be the answer key for the 10-2, 10-3 review worksheet. Okay, so on this guy, we're going to go ahead and break down the 252. So they're even. I know a 2 will go into it. So I'll get 2 and 126. 126 divisible by 2 again. So I'm going to get 2 and 63. And then 63 will break down into 7 and 9, and then the 9 will go to 3 and 3. So the 3's pair up and the 2's pair up, and all that moves out. So when I look here, I've got 3 times 2 is 6, times -6 is -36. On the inside, I have this 7 left over, so 7 left over on the inside. All right, number 2. All right, we're going to break down 343. So 343 is divisible by 7. So this will go to 7 and 49, and then 49 will go to 7 and 7. So a pair of 7s will move out, so I'm going to have 14 on the outside. You have this 7 left over, so he's left on the inside. Now on your variables, you've got m to the 4th. So again, when I'm looking at that, we've got 2 m's. So m squared, nothing left on the inside. And it'll be the same thing with the ends. I've got 2 pairs that moved out, so none left over on the inside. Okay, so on this guy, I can't reduce my fraction, but keep in mind we can't have a square root in the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply by root 5 on top and bottom. So I get the square root of 20 on top, and then these will pair up and move out, so I have a 5 on the bottom. Now, for the square root of 20, we do need to go ahead and break that down to 5 and 4, and then the 4 will go to 2 and 2. So 2's will pair up to move to the outside. So you'll have 2 on the outside. You have this 5 right here left over on the inside, and then you have a 5 left on the bottom. And that's going to be your answer. Okay. On this one, the 4 and the 2 on the outside can reduce. So I can go ahead and just call that a 2 up there. Now, I am still going to have to go ahead and multiply by the square root of 2, though, on top and bottom to get that square root out of the denominator. So on the top, I've got a 2 on the outside, and then I'm going to multiply these together because they're on the inside and get 10. On the bottom here, these 2 will pair up and move out, so I have a 2 on the outside. Now, since that's happened, the 2's will cancel on the outside, and you're going to be left with just the square root of 10. Okay, so number 5. So if I look at this, the A and the B can go ahead and pair up and move out. So on the outside right now, I've got a 2 and an AB. I still have the square root of 3 on the inside, and on the top I have a 5B. Now the B's can cancel out. I do need to go ahead and multiply by the square root of 3 on top and bottom to get that square root out of the denominator. So I'm going to end up with 5 root 3 on top, and then on the bottom, these are going to pair up and move out. So 2 times 3 is 6, and then I have an A left on the bottom right here. And that's going to be my final answer because the 5 and the 6 out here can't reduce. All right, number 6. So again, I'm going to go ahead and reduce my insides first. I'm going to be left with 1A on bottom here, and I'm going to be left with 3 B's on bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and multiply by the square root of 3AB to the 3rd on top and bottom. So on the top here, I've got a 15, and then an AB to the 3rd. On the bottom, I have a 4 on the outside, and then these guys actually pair up and move out. So instead of a 4, I actually need to erase that, because 4 times 3 would be 12. So I actually have a 12 on the outside here. The A paired up and moved out, and the B to the 3rd also paired up and moved out. Okay, now 15 will go to 3 and 5, but nothing will pair up and move out. The A right here, nothing will pair up and move out, but B to the 3rd, I do need to go ahead and look at, okay, B to the 3rd, I would have one pair that moved to the outside. So on the outside here, I have a B. On the inside, I have a 15, A, and a B left. And on the bottom, I have 12, A, B to the 3rd. So now in this case, the outside B's can cancel, so you're going to get a B squared on bottom. So your final answer here is going to be the square root of 15AB on top, and on the bottom we're going to get 12A and B squared on the bottom. And that's going to be your final answer there. Okay, so on this guy, I can't break down those square roots, but I can go ahead and combine like square roots or like kind of like terms, right? So negative 2 plus 3 is 1. Root 2, I don't care if you put the 1 out in front or not. And then minus 3 root 5. So again, just combine like square roots. Okay, on number 8 here, I am going to need to break these things down first before I try to combine like square roots. So this will go to 4 and 5. And this will go to 2 and 2, so 2's are going to pair up and move out. So I have 2 root 5 plus the square root of 5. Now 45 is going to break down to 5 and 9. The 9 will break down to 3 and 3, and these will pair up and move out. So you're going to have a 3 on the outside and a 5 left on the inside. Now, since all of these square roots are the same, we can go ahead and add. Just keep in mind that there is a 1 in front here. So 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 3 is 6 root 5. Okay, number 9. Okay, I know we've got square roots of 18, but I do need to go ahead and still break those down. So those will go to 2 and 9 and 3 and 3. So 3's pair up and move out. So I have 9 root 2. And it'll be the same thing here. You'll get the exact same breakdown. So the 3's will pair up and move out. So 2 times 3 is 6 root 2. And then I have the plus 3 root 2. So again, all these are the same. I can go ahead and add them up. So 15 plus 3 more would be 18 root 2. And that's going to be your final answer. Okay, so on this one, the 6 breaks down to 2 and 3. Not much can happen there. On your 54, you can go ahead and call that like 6 and 9. And then the 6 will go to 2 and 3. The 9 will go to 3 and 3. So the 3's will pair up and move out. So right now I have negative 3 root 6 minus 3 times 3 would be 9. Now I have 2 and 3 left over on the inside. So I have a 6 left over on the inside. And then minus the square root of 2. Now I combine like square roots so I can put these two guys together. So negative 3 and negative 9 would be negative 12 root 6 minus the square root of 2. And that right there is going to be your final answer. Okay, number 11 here. Okay, so we're multiplying. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply them together. And I'm going to get, 2 times 8 is 16. So I have the square root of 16. And the square root of 16 is 4. Okay, number 12. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply these together. So 21 times 18, I've got the square root of 378, and then there are 4 ends. Now 378 goes to 21 and 18, so this will go to 3 and 7, 2 and 9, and then 3 and 3. All right, so if I look at this, 3's will pair up and move out. So I have a 3 on the outside. Now I'm going to have to multiply these 3 numbers left over. So 3 times 7 is 21, times 2 is 42. And then looking at your ends, you've got 4 ends, so that means you have 2 pairs. So n squared on the outside. And that's my final answer. Okay, number 13. All right, so on this one, we're going to go ahead and distribute. So I'm going to multiply the negative 4 root 35 times a 2 and get negative 8 root 35. I'm going to multiply to here and get negative 4. 35 times 15 is 525. All right, and so I know that this will break down to 35 and 15. The 35 will break to 5 and 7, and the 15 will break down to 3 and 5. So the 5's will pair up and move out on that guy. So I'll have a negative 20 on the outside. Now 3 times 7 is 21. And then here on the 35, it's going to break down to 5 and 7, which doesn't go anywhere. So we have a negative 8 root 35 still just hanging out front. Can't put any of that together because they're different square roots. So that's going to be your final answer there. Number 14. Okay, so let's go ahead and distribute here. So it's outside numbers I multiply and get negative 8 root 6. Then I'm going to multiply, in this case, I'm going to have negative 4 root 36 because I'm multiplying those inside numbers together. So remember, outside multiplies with outside, inside with inside. So the 6 won't go anywhere because it'll go to 2 and 3, but nothing will pair up and move out. Now on this guy, the square root of 36 is 6. So I really just have negative 24 here. So negative 8 root 6 minus 24. Okay, so on this guy, we're going to do some foiling. So negative 2 times negative 6 is 12. Negative 2 times negative 2 root 6 is positive 4 root 6. Distribute here and get negative 6 root 6. And then distribute here and we get negative 2 root 36. All right, so again here, this will just, square root of 36 is just 6. So 2 times 6 is 12. So in this case, the 12s actually cancel each other out. So now I'm just going to put together the square roots of 6. Again, 6 will break down to 2 and 3, but nothing will pair up and move out. So then when I put those together, I get negative 2 root 6. Okay. All right, so same thing on this one. I'm going to take square root of 6 times square root of 6 and get square root of 36. Square root 18. Square root 30. And square root of 15. All right, well, this guy goes to a 6. I'm going to break this down to 2 and 9, 3 and 3. So 3's pair up and move out. So I have 3 root 2 here. I'm going to put the 6 up front here. 30 will break down to 3 and 10, 2 and 5. So nothing will pair up and move out. So I'm going to leave it as a square root of 30. And 15 is going to break down to 3 and 5. So plus the square root of 15. And since I have no like square roots, that's going to be your final answer. All right, I'm going to problem number 17 here, some just cumulative review stuff. All right, so this is asking us to write it in slope-intercept form. So we got to think about that. That's y equals mx plus b. So my start position here would be right here at 3. So my b equals 3. All right, and then I'm kind of trying to find a pattern where it looks like it's going to cross. Okay, so when I do this, I'm going to count up 5 and run across 4. So my slope will be 5/4. So my equation will be y equals 5/4 x plus 3. Okay, number 18. Again, we're doing slope-intercept form, but we have 2 coordinate points. So the first thing we've got to do is find our slope. So I've got, keep in mind that it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to have m equals 5 minus 1, 2 minus negative 2. So I end up with 4 over 4 or just a 1. Okay, so now we've got a point and a slope. So we're going to start in point slope, and then we'll take it to slope intercept. Now, it doesn't matter which coordinate point you use. I'm just going to use this one right here, the 2, 5, but it really doesn't matter. So y minus my y value of 5 equals 1, and then x minus my x value, which is 2. So I distribute y minus 5 equals x minus 2, and then I'm going to add the 5 over and end up with y equals x plus 3. Okay, on the next problem here. Okay, so on this guy, we are looking for slope-intercept form, and it has to be perpendicular. Okay, so this one's a touch trickier. So if we're thinking about x equals 0, well, if we're going to graph that, that would cut through your x-axis, right, at 0. So your line will run just right along that y-axis there. Okay, now if it's saying it's perpendicular, we know that that means it needs to make a 90-degree angle. So I need a line that's going to cut through that blue line. So I've got negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've got a point right here. So for this to go be perpendicular, it's going to have to run this way to the blue line. So now what's the equation of that line there? Well, that would be a y equals, because it's crossing the y-axis. And where's it crossing at? It's crossing at 5. And that's going to be your answer there on that one. Okay, this one graph. All right, so on the first one here, I will make this guy the red one. Okay, so I'm going to start at negative 3. A negative 2 slope would be down 2, right 1. Same thing going the other way. Okay, it is going to be a solid line. And then looking at this sign here, that sign says greater. So I'm going to shade everything on this side here. Okay. All right, now I'm going to change colors here for the second guy. We'll go to blue here, okay? And so then on this guy right here, we're going to start at 2. A slope of negative 1/3 says down 1, right 3. Okay, it's going to be a dotted line. All right, and then this sign says less, so we are going to shade below. Okay, all right, and so your final answer will be kind of that gray purpley area where the two colors overlap. Okay, so your final answer is going to be everything in this section right here. All right, next problem, number 21, solve by substitution. So I'm just going to take this guy right here and plug it in for y equals. So I have negative 2x plus 3 times x minus 2 equals 2. So distribute, combine like terms. So I put those together, get x, and then add the 6 over and get 8. Now to come up with the coordinate point though, remember we got to take this and plug it back in. So I've got y equals 8 minus 2 or y equals 6. So my coordinate point is going to be 8, 6. Okay, so on this one, we're selling some cookies here. So again, remember each sentence is an equation. So we got 2 packages of sugar cookies, 4 packages of oatmeal for $54. Okay, so I'm just going to use like S and, let's see, we'll do S for sugar. What are we looking for here again? What is the cost? So cost of sugar. Okay, an oatmeal, I'm not going to use an O because it looks like a 0. I'll use an M. So this will be cost of oatmeal cookies. Okay, so I have got 2 sugars, 4 oatmeals, and my total is $54. Okay, now I read the second sentence here. It says 9 packages of sugar, 2 oatmeals for $67. So 9 sugars, 2 oatmeals, and my amount was $67. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just use elimination here, and I'm going to make these m's go away. And to do that, I'm going to just multiply the bottom here by negative 2. All right, so we have still the 2s, 4m equals 54. On the bottom here, I got a negative 18s, a negative 4m, and a negative 134. Now those will cancel, so I get negative 16s equals 80. Okay, and then I'm going to divide by the 16, and so I find out, oh, negative 80, sorry, negative 80. And then I'm going to find out that that means my sugar, I'm going to have $5 for a sugar cookie. All right, so now take this and plug it back in. I'm just going to do the top one, but it doesn't matter. So I get 2 times 5 plus 4m equals 54. So again, this would be 10. Subtract the 10 over and get 44, and divide and get 11. All right, so that means sugar cookies will cost $5 and oatmeal cookies will cost $11. All right, number 23 here. Okay, anything to the 0 power cancels out. Now technically this is a negative, so it needs to drop. So I have 3b squared on top, and I have an a on the bottom. So the a's would cancel out, and I have an a left on top. So you would just have 3b and an a. Order's not important there, just as long as you got all the parts. Now another way you could have done that is you could have just added these up. Since they're side by side, you can add, and that's still going to get you 1a left. Okay, next problem. All right, we're going to drop in this 4 to all parts. So I'm going to drop the 4 in. So I get 256 when I take 4 to the 4th. I get a to the 4th. Remember, there's a 1 there. And then b to the 8th. And that's your final answer. Okay, number 25. All right, so since this is a negative, it needs to drop down there. So I still have m to the 3rd on top. I have 2 on bottom. There was 1 n. I'm bringing down 3 more, so now there are 4 n's. Okay, 26, we're going to subtract. So when we're subtracting, remember we're going to distribute that negative through. So I get negative k squared, a positive 2k, and a plus 7. Now throw that out. The k squareds in this case will cancel. So now I'm looking at negative 5k and 2k for negative 3k. 2 plus 7 is 9. Okay, on this one, I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So I'm going to get 15r squared minus 30r minus 18r plus 36. Now combine like terms. So 15r squared minus 48r plus 36 is your final answer. All right, last page here. Okay, so on this guy, 4-term grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and group this off. I'm going to pull a 7 and an n squared out of that first one and get 3n minus 4. Out of the second one, I'm going to pull out a 6 and get 3n minus 4. Now remember, your insides need to match. So since these match, let's rewrite it. 7n squared plus 6 and 3n minus 4. And that's going to be your final answer there. Okay, on this guy, this is kind of a hot mess, so let's just pull a GCF out. So when I'm pulling a GCF out on this one, biggest number that come out will be like, I think a 6, and then an x squared. So if I look at my x's, okay, they don't all have y, so I can't pull a y out. So I'll get 4 y to the third plus 9 y squared plus 5x. Okay, on this one, again, this is just another GCF, so pull out an n, and you get n minus 8, and that's your final answer there. Okay, on this guy, we are looking for factors of negative 27 that get us negative 6, so 3 and 9, and then if I make that 9 negative, that will get me that negative 6 I'm looking for in the middle. So I've got a plus 3 and a minus 9 as my answers there. Okay, on 32, all right, we got a number out front, so let's make a list here. So I got 1 times 3, 120, 210, 4, 5. And then I'm looking for a negative 16. Okay, so I think if I look right here, 1 times 10 is 10. 3 times 6 is 2, or 3 times 2 is 6. And if I make them both negative, that's going to give me that negative 16 in the middle here. And then a negative times a negative gives me a positive, so that does work. Okay, so now I've got a 1-3 combo out front, 1n, 3n, we already know they're both negatives, and then 210 combo on the back side. And that's going to be your final answer there. Okay, number 33, difference of squares. So you're asking yourself, can I square root? Yep. Do I have subtraction? Yep. And can I square root? So 7v minus 4 and 7v plus 4. And that's going to be your final answer there. Okay, this one says solve by factoring. So we need to go ahead and set equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that 16 over and get k squared plus 10k plus 16 equals 0. So now I'm finding factors of 16 that get us 10, right? Factors of 16 that get us 10 would be like 2 and 8. So I'm going to get k plus 2, k plus 8 equals 0. And now set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So I end up with k equals negative 2 and k equals negative 8 for my final answers. Okay, so on this one, let's go ahead and set this equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and move it over here and get 2p squared minus 11p plus 14 equals 0. So again, I'm making a list here. 1 times 2, 1 times 14, 2 times 7. All right, so if I got a 1 times 7, that would be 7. 2 times 2 would be 4. And if I make them both negatives, that gets me negative 11, and a negative times a negative happens to be a positive 14. Okay, so my factors here I've got 1p and 2p. On the back side, oh, we know they're both negatives. On the back side, I have a 2, 7, and that's equal to 0. So now I've got p minus 2 equal to 0 and 2p minus 7 equal to 0. So p will equal 2. I'm going to add the 7 on this one and get 2p equals 7, and then get 7 halves. So I've got 2 and 7 halves as my answer. All right, and the last problem, quadratic formula. All right, so we need to know A, B, and C. So A is 4, B is 11, and C is 6. Okay, now keep in mind we are using the quadratic formula here. Okay, so using that, let's go ahead and put in, we've got negative b, so it'd be negative 11 plus or minus 11 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. All right, so let's type inside my square root there first. So 11 squared minus 4 times 6, and I end up with 25. So negative 11 plus or minus 25, the square root of 25 over 8. So now the square root of 25 is 5. So x equals negative 11 plus 5 divided by 8, and x equals negative 11 minus 5 divided by 8. All right, so on this top one here, I end up with a negative 6 divided by 8, so I get a negative 3/4. On this one, I get negative 16 divided by 8, and I get negative 2. And those are going to be my final answers. All right, that concludes this answer key.